everyone, and welcome to our M360 APAC Security Summit. It's a pleasure to have you all here. I'm Samantha Kite, the Head of Industry Security, and today we're talking about powering cybersecurity and advancing innovation. We will feature a diverse lineup of speakers. We have 3 presentations coming up, and they're all eager to share their cybersecurity insights with you. We'll be looking at a number of different topics, looking also at evolving threats and evolving solutions. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Gerald Reddig, who's the Global Product Manager Marketing Director for Cybersecurity at Nokia. So please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you. It's is this also working here? Then, yeah. Okay, yeah. The first session is evolving threats, evolving solutions, and with this, I would like to go to the title of the presentation. It's talking about exploring the integration of AI into an extended detection and response environment. We heard a lot about Gen AI, but how does it play actually a beneficial role in a security operations center? And here the next 15 minutes I clustered this presentation into 3 different parts. The first is we're talking about the challenges. The second is then we look into what are the expectations when we put us in the shoes from a chief information security officer. And finally then the last question is to exploring the integration of Gen AI into an extended detection and response. All right, let's start with the challenge first. And for sure, all of us, we have heard that ChatGPT went to fake GPT. We have heard about deep fakes. We heard about all of these different things that comes with Gen AI as a challenge for the telecom industry, not just only for the telecom industry, for all of us actually, because when Gen AI goes into the hands from cyber attackers, from those that are starting the offense, they're leveraging the Gen AI. And finally, the ultimate goal for them is to make it more accurate, higher quality in their attacks, to find higher quality in their code lines for attacks, writing some malware. Finally, for a larger scale of cyber threats. The second thing is then the defense side. So they are looking into how the CSPs are looking for some sectors in the telecommunication security operation team who is maybe benefiting from Gen AI, who is maybe the one actually defining some use cases for Gen AI in the defense sector. Let's look into the threat intelligence, and especially in the threat intelligence report that today Nokia published a threat intelligence report. And I would like to give here one main findings. For sure, we cannot go through all of them, but yeah, I encourage you actually also to download the report that went live today. So one of the main findings is AI-driven DDoS attacks. And when we look into the traffic row, we see that the DDoS traffic continues to grow in a higher rate. And when we look only to the last 12 months, we see an increase of the traffic of 160%. So the question is, why is this? And why is it such a huge traffic growth? And the reason is the botnet. The botnet is definitely something which is a major driver for all of these DDoS attacks because it builds an army of different IoT devices, unsecured, unmanaged IoT devices, and brings this into botnets to start a sophisticated and targeted attack. And now comes also AI and automation into the game, and that helps the attackers, the criminals actually also to orchestrate and to automate these kind of attacks against enterprises and enterprises, mission-critical infrastructure or organizations. So then the question is, okay, when we understand that the bad side is already using the Gen AI, it might be an unfair game actually when we don't use the Gen AI for our purpose and to start with some countermeasures against this. But the expectation right now, what is it? Which kind of GenAI application in the cybersecurity operations are the most common current application right now for an appropriate cybersecurity strategy? Nokia did together with Omdia in this year in telco security survey, and they looked into these kind of questions, asking what is the most current application. Number one is anomaly detection. Anomaly detection for known and unknown attacks. The second one is the automated security. So these kind of two things are something that define a particular use case for an GenAI application in Security Operations Center. So the next question is then also, why are we doing this? What is in it then also for an head of Security Operations Center or in CISO? So that's the next question, and here's the answer. It's the performance metrics. 60% saying, yeah, the performance metrics to increase my security posture. This is number one. The second is then also the cost-benefit analysis. There's a relationship with the attack, with a data breach, a security breach, and the cost of the breach. And as longer someone lingers into your network, as higher the costs are. As faster I can start my remediation, my mitigation program, as lower the costs are. All right, so now look into the last part, the integration. The integration of GenAI into a 5G specialized extended detection and response. Look, this is the situation that we have often in security center. And even also I had the pleasure actually to look into a security operations center. It was, sometimes my neck was hurting because I had this swivel chair effect, because I looked into this monitor, because that was some alarm sending from a pointed security solution. The second one gave me on a dashboard some syslogs from Splunk, for example, and the third one and so on. So, and then to contextualize all of these different alarms, that was challenging. So this is what I call, this is the single glass of paint situation actually, where I have all of the best players, but all of them running with different dashboards, different logs and alarms. So ultimate goals for security teams is always to find a way to bring this into one dashboard, to contextualize the data, and then even also that the software allows me or gives me much more valuable information of indicator of compromise or similar information. What is necessary, and these are the three things in a nutshell, to integrate the tools. Integrate the tools actually that you have in your existing security landscape, like the EDRs, like the NDRs, like the privilege access, identity access management, SIMs tools, SOAR tools, and so on. This comes only with a library of interfaces and APIs, REST APIs, and these are necessary to connect to a multi-vendor security landscape. The second one is then also to integrate your intelligence, and even that point gets even more important because it's not just the internal threat intelligence, but also to connect to an external threat intelligence source. And the last point, and that's often for integrated security, for pointed solution providers, very hard to understand how to connect to service operation teams, how to connect to network operation teams, because finally it could be always go into blindsided situations where I have maybe an attack and then I have to find out who can help. Is it the network operation team, the service operation team to terminate the service and spin up a new one? Or is it my responsibility as a security operation team? And to have an integrated feedback loop, this is something that has to be developed and will be developed, and is definitely something where the integration of GenAI helps. So the last point, and I still have only a few more minutes, I see is what is the role of GenAI in the telco security operation? Right now, I put you in the shoes from a security analyst. So imagine you starting your shift right now and you have to check, okay, which kind of attacks are in my network. So here's just a view, and hopefully it's visible from the resolution, but also the size. We look over the shoulder from a security analyst right now. It goes right now into a video mode. And then I explain to you actually all of the different steps that the security analyst does. Okay, so the first thing is he looks to all of these different domains. You see the core, transport, and RAN. He clicked on a RAN and he can immediately see there's a new malware detected here in the topology view, especially for a radio access. And radio access is a central unit and the associated distributed unit. What he can see right now is that there's a malware detected called Krasu Trojan and an associated account, Leonite, someone who works inside the company. So what you can see here right now, and this is the integration of GenAI, is a smart summary of what has been detected from all of these different pointed solutions, like an EDR or privileged access management. And he can also ask in an LLM format different questions. So he has a free field, or he has some dynamic generated questions that he can immediately select. So what he selected is how does this malware work as a pre-selected. What he would like to know as a next question is, tell me more about Leonite. And Leonite actually is an insider, so he has all of the privileges. So what the security analyst receives about Leonite is his traffic, this abnormal traffic, and then also, for instance, a video log file for this particular time frame to see, is there some suspicious traffic during this time window or not. So then finally, he asks to suggest the next steps. And the GenAI, based on some previous attacks and the confidence score behind this remediation programs, selected then appropriate playbooks, scripts that he can immediately start to play, or he runs all of them because he feels comfortable and with this kind of playbooks. Then we see here different kind of actions happen. So the threat score goes down from red to yellow. And finally then the playbooks completed the program. And the next step as a security analyst is to write the report. So often that takes also time, 10 to 15 minutes. For me, it took longer, honestly. And right now with the GenAI, it's just a fingertip away. So the creation of the report to be compliant to the regulator, that's one important step. So what we have seen right now is the threat hunting and guided response for the security analyst and the report creation. These are the three different use cases that we have seen here right now to start the mitigation of a particular incident. What does it mean then actually from the impact of the GenAI and threat detection? So what we know actually, the response time is divided into the detection time, the decision-making time, and the mitigation time. Ideally, I would like to see the decision-making time completely eliminated. Probably that's not possible. But if I have the situation where the detection comes in with all of the agents that are detecting some anomalies, and then ideally the decision-making time will be eliminated because the GenAI gives me immediately the right actions, or ideally then in the next step coming from the semi-automated remediation to a fully automated remediation. That would reduce the response time immediately. So our team, together with customers in a so-called A-Star lab from Nokia, Advanced Security Testing and Research Lab in Dallas, they looked into what are the benefits, what is the impact. And what they found is a potential reduction, and the potential reduction is depending on the different use cases or incidents, even also what is the maturity of the security operations center, a potential reduction of the response time of 50%. The second one is the reduction false positive, and higher quality, higher accuracy. that's something where Gen AI plays an effective role. And then finally, also this, when I say to eliminate the decision-making time and effective incident handling. So all in all, when you're considering these things to define what kind of use cases makes the most impact of Gen AI in my security operations center, that's probably the best case to define the journey for your next evolution of Gen AI into an extended detection and response environment. With this, thank you very much.
Thanks, Gerald. I'll invite our next speaker up from GSMAI, James Joyner. He's the lead analyst at GSMA Intelligence, and he's been working on some security reports. This is actually the first time we have come together to write security reports with GSMAI. If you're not aware of who they are and you're a GSMA member, there's probably a lot of resources that you have access to and aren't aware of. So it's something that it's worth highlighting and contacting your teams to find more about. But I'm sure James will tell you more. So let me welcome him on stage.
Great, thanks, Sam. So yeah, my name is James Joyner, and I'm an industry analyst at GSMA Intelligence, which is the research and consulting arm of the GSMA. In today's session, we'll be hearing from mobile operators and network vendors, but for the next 10 minutes or so, I want to give you the industry analyst perspective on mobile network security. So many of the insights I'll be sharing with you today come from a new 5-part report series from GSMA Intelligence. The report series analyzes the threat landscape across different regions using a common set of metrics. It also highlights the latest security innovations and mobile industry best practices on security. As you can see from the timeline, the first report was published in June, focusing on Latin America, and then we have a series of other region-specific reports coming out later this year. In my presentation today, I'll be sharing key findings from the Asia-Pacific report, which we published in 2 weeks' time at Singapore International Cyber Week. So, in doing the research and speaking to lots of mobile operators in the process, it was apparent very quickly that mobile security is a top business priority. This is backed up by an annual survey of network strategy and procurement decision makers carried out by GSMA Intelligence. The survey highlights that 90% of mobile operators view network security as very or extremely important to their network transformation strategies. Regulatory compliance is obviously one factor driving that, but it's also several other factors at play, including the need to invest in security as operators roll out new technologies. So yeah, 5G standalone in particular raises a number of direct and indirect security issues. The transition to a cloud-native and service-based architecture in the 5G core brings an expanded attack surface, driving operators to invest in threat detection and response capabilities. But 5G standalone is, of course, just one of many new technologies that operators are evaluating. As the chart shows, cloud and edge networks, Open RAN, and private wireless are all in the mix, and each of these technologies comes with its own security risks that must be properly evaluated prior to implementation. Despite the rising number of 5G standalone deployments in Asia Pacific, operators in the region do not currently view attacks on virtualized infrastructure among the top security threats they face, according to a survey we conducted as part of this research. Instead, operators in the region rank phishing and ransomware as the top security threats they face, closely followed by supply chain and signaling attacks. The high score we see for phishing and ransomware likely relates to the rise of attackers leveraging tools like ChatGPT to launch attacks at greater scale, but also more targeted and sophisticated attacks. I think what's also interesting in this chart is that the views of operators in Asia Pacific are fairly well aligned with operators in other regions when it comes to the top security attacks they face. Now, this implies that the security innovations and mobile best practices in one region are highly applicable to operators in other regions, and that's really why we see global collaboration and knowledge sharing as so important to improving security. Now, the importance of industry collaboration is evident when mobile operators rank which security innovations have had the greatest impact over the last 3 years. As you can see from the chart, sharing threat intelligence tops the rankings, and this reflects the growing number of operators sharing threat information and mitigation techniques with one another through initiatives such as the GSMA's Telecommunication Information Sharing and Analysis Centre. Industry collaboration has also driven progress in a number of other areas, for example, defining security guidelines and implementing new security controls, which both rank highly among what operators view as the top security innovations in recent years. The mobile cybersecurity knowledge base is a good example of industry collaboration. The process of building the knowledge base began with a comprehensive threat landscape involving not just operators, but network vendors and regulators. These threats were then mapped to appropriate security controls, with the analysis then collated into the document that became the mobile cybersecurity knowledge base. Now you can see one of the key messages within the knowledge base is that cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. The process begins with network and device vendors embedding security features into their hardware, their products, their applications, and then mobile operators implement robust security controls to protect their networks and IT systems. The mobile cybersecurity knowledge base also provides operators with a structured way to assess the security controls they have in place to protect their networks and IT systems. Operators can compare their own internal security controls with the ones outlined in the knowledge base. Operators can then identify and address any gaps within their organizations, enabling them to progress along the security maturity assessment model. As you can see, the model starts at level 0 and goes all the way up to level 5, where operators are continuously improving the security processes and procedures they have in place based on vendor updates and changes in the risk and regulation environment. While security controls are pivotal to developing a solid technical foundation, they're only truly effective when paired with a well-informed and vigilant workforce. As you can see, operators identify providing comprehensive security training as a #1 area in which they require support. And this really reflects 2 points. One, we hear often a lot about the global shortage in security specialists, and we see this as leading operators to invest more in upskilling and reskilling existing employees to fill those shortage in skills gaps. And 2, really all employees require a degree of cybersecurity training in order to identify threats and learn about how they can help mitigate those. You can also see from the chart that operators identify the need for enhanced network visibility and monitoring tools to improve the security, and it's an area where they see and are asking for more support. Currently, from conversations we hear, operators say that they have limited visibility into some of their network assets, while, like we heard earlier, the visibility they do have is often not accessible from a single location. And with 5G standalone, this becomes more important than ever, with operators requiring greater visibility into their network assets. And with this visibility, it then becomes possible to correlate this information with subscriber and device identities to combat DDoS attacks and other service-impacting traffic anomalies. On to my final slide. So just to wrap up, I'd like to highlight 3 key takeaways from my presentation today. Firstly, it's clear that the security landscape is evolving at a rapid pace. The confluence of several trends, the transition to 5G standalone, new forms of artificial intelligence, and increasing levels of digitization has led to an expanded attack surface, which is driving network security to the top of operators' business priorities. The second key takeaway is the importance of industry collaboration to mobile network security. In my presentation, I highlighted several examples of this, including operators sharing threat intelligence, setting industry standards, and implementing new security controls. And my final key takeaway is that the measures required to enhance security are not always technical. Operators and their partners also need to build a solid security foundation, focusing on good security hygiene and educating employees about the security risks they face. Now, you can hear more about all of these key takeaways and many more insights in the GSMA Intelligence Asia Pacific Telco Securities Report. That will be free to download on the GSMA Intelligence website from October 15th and released at the Singapore International Cyber Week. Now, with that, I'll hand you back to Sam. Thank you.
Thank you, James. That was a really great view of the landscape in APAC, which is actually not that different from the global landscape, which is, I don't know if it's comforting to see, but we're dealing with the same sorts of challenges in different parts of the world. So I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Yolanda Sands, who's a technical director at the GSMA and looks after post-quantum task force. Something to say about the post-quantum task force is that it really is a task force established so that the telcos can come together to work out how to deal with the quantum-safe algorithms that will be coming out. That's not something that we develop, but it's really important work to understand the impact on the mobile network operators. So without further ado, I'd like to bring or welcome Yolanda up to the stage.
Thank you very much. So it's really a pleasure to be here to talk about what are the activities that GSMA is doing in the context of post-quantum cryptography. In order to provide a bit of context and understand why GSMA wants to take a big role on this particular matter, I would like to explain briefly the problem that we are facing. So, from the classical computer that we are talking about 0 and 1 bits, we all know that we have some limitation in terms of power computer where we cannot decrypt the current cryptography that we have due to the amount of GR that is required in order to perform certain algorithms. However, when we move to the quantum computers, we are not talking about 0 and 1. We are talking about also all the different ranks that we have from 0 and 1. And this means automatically that the power of the quantum computers at some point can be powerful enough in order to resolve some of the algorithms that we have. And this means that we can have that some of our crypto in clear in a couple of years, because there are already algorithms that can be used with quantum computers that can break our crypto that we use in all the telecom network. And that's why in 2022, GSMA, together with IBM and Vodafone as the main initiator, they create a forum inside of GSMA where we can all together collaborate to make sure that our networks are quantum safe. And this group is really focused to prepare the migration plan for the quantum era. We are not discussing, and this is a question that you may have in your minds, we are not discussing at what time the quantum computers are going to be powerful enough. What we are discussing is that wherever this is going to happen, the telecom industry is going to be ready to press the button and become quantum safe. Because if we are not doing all of this together, this is not going to work, because we need to ensure certain level of interoperability, backward compatibility, and etc. And we need to make sure also that the algorithms that are defined in the standard bodies are quantum safe and are updated accordingly. Additionally, we are facing another issue or another attack that is coming from the quantum computer that is called store now and decrypted later. Currently, today, there are bad actors that are taking the data in transit, which is encrypted, and I cannot do anything today. However, when the quantum computers are powerful enough, I will be able to disclose this information. And there are assets on the operator side that remain sensible for days. So that's why this group also is trying to understand what are the critical assets that needs to be identified to become quantum safe. And we are not doing this just because the telecom operator asks GSMA to do. We are doing this because already the different governments has already issued different guidelines regarding post-quantum recommendation. These recommendations, of course, are generic enough for the different industries. So the role of GSMA and this group is to translate those requirements in the context of the telecom industry to help the operators, but also the vendors, to understand what is the migration plan mandated by the government. If we are not doing anything now, at the end of the day, the regulators are going to take place, and we need to make sure that the operators and the different entities in the ecosystem are aware of the problem that we are facing, and also they are preparing for the migration plan. Across all of the different guidelines that has been released, I have summarized a set of principles that are across the different documents that has been issued for the government. No matter whether this is coming from Asia or American, there are a common part that needs to be considered in the context of the telecom. The first one is to make sure that we wait for the finalization of the standard process. This is critical, and GSMA and the post-quantum group encourage all the companies to make sure that they implement standard algorithms. Because if everyone is going to start to prepare their own algorithms and proprietary stuff, we are going to have fragmentation, and in particular in security, that's something that is not desirable. So please make sure that you follow the standard process and you implement standard algorithms into your product. You need to prepare the organization for the quantum threat. What does it mean? That you need to build awareness to your customers, but also internally, to make sure that everyone understands where the crypto is used, how it's used, and what are the steps that are required to update those critical assets. As part of that, you need to test. So we have already certain algorithms that I will explain later that has been already released. And we need to understand what does it mean in the context of the telecom industry. So we need to make sure that those algorithms are going to work in terms of performance for those critical assets that we have on the network, that they have some constraints in terms of computer, in terms of CPU, and so on. So we need to make sure that the performance is going to be legible in order to be able to run those algorithms. Another important part is that we need to move from the algorithms in paper into the product and identify any potential gap that is not covered by maybe 3GPP LCITF specification, and either it can be covered by GSMA or by other organizations. So we need to understand that we have a complete picture of all the ecosystem that we have on PQC. And of course, that I already mentioned, so the cryptographic algorithms are using everywhere in the context of the telecom network. So it's critical for the operator and the vendors to identify critical assets that are affected by quantum computer attacks. You may be aware that symmetric protocols are more secure or less impacted by quantum computer attacks, while the private key cryptographic is more sensible to quantum computer attacks. So that's why we need to identify those assets first and move to the quantum safe era as soon as is possible. And of course, as I say, so some of the earliest adopters are going to be those critical assets that are more affected by quantum computer attacks, and those are the ones that are going to be quantum safe first. But again, we need to take care about interoperability, backward compatibility, and make sure that there is no fragmentation in this particular matter. So as I mentioned already, so in August of this year, NIST already announced the first 3 post-quantum cryptographic standards. So here you have the names just to be familiar with. You don't need to understand all the names that we have here, but I want to make sure that you are familiar that those first algorithms are already released. And the question that you may have now is, okay, what does it mean for the telecom industry? When those algorithms are already released, now, for instance, ITF is going to start to implement those algorithms in the TLS stack, as an example. So the TLS stack is something that, if you translate to the telecom industry, that's something that our network are using every day. So again, we need to understand when those algorithms are going to be in our networks, how they are going to work. It's going to be enough memory, enough CPU to run those. It is required to ensure backward compatibility with the previous product that we have. We need to ensure certain level of interoperability. All of this discussion is going to happen in 3GPP and ETSI, and we have already the GSMA Post-Quantum Forum in order to make sure that we can influence those standardization to make sure that the telecom network is covered, and we can implement those algorithms as part of our networks. Of course, we need to create a plan on how to implement those algorithms. We need to have a laboratory environment to test the algorithm and see how they perform in the different constraints. If you are thinking about new projects, please make sure that the post-quantum migration is part of the plan. And again, it's important to create a crypto inventory in order to understand how and where those algorithms are used in order to identify the one that needs to be quantum safe. So, but again, the operators are not working alone, and there is an entire supply chain that needs to be considered. So not only from the internal organization, from the operator, but also make sure that the vendors are also ready and have a prepared plan for the post-quantum migration. So I already mentioned there are going to be some limitations that needs to be considered. For instance, the SIM card is one of them, where we have a constrained device where the memory but also the processor is limited. So we need to make sure that those algorithms can run properly. And the same in the context of the IoT world. And again, because the telecom operator network are really focused on a standard and rely on a standard, we need to make sure that we plan accordingly, and we need to make sure that SC, 3GPP, and so on are there in the world to make their algorithms quantum safe. And talking about what we are doing, so in February 2024, we released the first document that select certain use cases from the telecom network, the one that you have here, and we prepare a detailed impact of the post-quantum cryptographic in these algorithms. After this delivery in February 2024, until now, we have been working on those use cases, and we have made a migration plan for those. Identify the system and context, so how this particular use cases is used, and we define the framework. We identify what are the sensitive data in terms of post-quantum, in terms of quantum computer attacks. We define a detailed analysis of the migration plan. We identify what are the dependencies with the different standards that are involved, but also open source, vendors, and the performance, again, just to make sure the algorithms can work. For those that they have PKI implication, we explain what does it mean for this particular use case. We need to think about also legacy impact in order to ensure backward compatibility. So that's why for each specific use case, we check the legacy impact to make sure that whatever we put on the market is backward compatible. And also, we try to explain the synergies with internal and external programs that this particular use case may have. So this is going to be published in October together with an update table of the different government initiatives that we have seen at the beginning. So, and the last one is provide you an overview of the different deliverables that we have made. The first one, it was high level of the PQC impact on the context of the telecom network. We try to deliver every document for each Mobile World Congress, either Barcelona and Las Vegas. And as I already explained, the post-quantum migration plan for those use cases that we have seen are going to be published this Friday, together with the update table of the government initiative. And yeah, we will have a Fit Post-Quantum seminar in Las Vegas Tuesday next week, just in case some of you are going to be there. But again, I just want to provide you good picture of the different activities that we are doing. This is the set of companies that we have already involved. So if you are GSMA members, please contact me and you will be able to enjoy. We have particular interest from the operators and vendors that are based in Asia. That's why we have a dedicated call at 6 a.m. UK time to facilitate the Asian delegates to participate. If you are not GSMA members but you wanted to participate, please contact me and I will try to figure out what is the best way that you can participate on those meetings. And again, my final statement is going to be that we need to do this all together, make sure that everyone is ready in order to make our networks quantum safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jolanda. All right, I think it's time for our fireside chat. So I'm going to invite Gerald back up and Anton as well, who is the CISO at Globe Telecom, to join me for a discussion. So yeah, come up on the stage. We're starting, yeah. Hopefully this is working. Great. That was quite a call to action. I know Jolanda always tells me she only knows 1% of quantum, and then I start to get a bit nervous about how much more there is to go.
I was already drafting all right, you know what, I got to join. I didn't see our logo there, so.
Yeah, no, good topics. So we've had 3 great presentations, all giving us quite a different perspective on either emerging technologies, the current landscape. Shall we just start with maybe what are you seeing currently, Anton, for Globe in the current threat landscape?
So the challenge for us, and it was the conversation I had with David this morning, we're starting to see more and more, and this is across both IT and network. So as a heads up, my organization within Globe, we cover both IT and network, so there's no separate CISO or separate CSO. I've been lucky enough to be responsible for both, so that's why I don't sleep with just one eye open. I sleep with both eyes open, just because of that challenge. One of the big things right now, really around identity, we're seeing, for example, the threat of info stealers, where basically, especially with the adoption of work from home, right? As more, you almost have to allow BYOD to an extent because of what happened post-pandemic. And now all of these info stealer attacks being able to breach the personal devices of our employees or contractors, now they can lift immediately credentials, do session-based hijacking, using the cookies inside the devices. So really the awareness now is like, look, almost every platform needs to have multi-factor authentication, and not just basic MFA, but phishing-resistant MFA. So for us, we're now going back to relying on YubiKeys and physical tokens, even for all across employees, just because of that threat. And again, that cuts across both, not just IT. It sounds like it's an IT security issue, but it certainly is a network security issue too, with more remote access even to telco environments and telco workloads. So that's half of it, and really related, I think, is really revisiting zero trust. I know it's kind of like buzzy as a word, but really, I think we are getting closer to trying to figure out, look, what is a practical way to implement zero trust? And I would just say the third thing is more, I guess, on the telco side of the fence, at least as fraud, so we're also responsible for that. Really more shift away from SMS fraud. I think operators such as ourselves and everybody else, like, look, our policies on SMS is so strict already. We don't deliver any SMS that has a link in it to any of our customers. However, now we're starting to see more of the SMS fraud move over to OTTs. So either it's RCS, either iMessage, or more and more becoming voice. So there's a lot of phishing happening, and I think we're more and more, I guess, helpless when it comes to kind of these types of attacks, and hopefully that's something we could try to figure out down the line.
Great. And Gerald, how about yourself? I mean, your use case worked quite well with what Anton is seeing, so.
Definitely, yes. And when I look globally, actually, and especially from the telecommunication point of view, man-in-the-middle attacks, eavesdropping, phishing attacks, these are definitely making the headlines these days. When we look globally from the distribution point of view, where are most of the attacks? Definitely what we have seen in threat intelligence report, 35% roughly is in North America. Another 35% is for Europe, and 15% is for Asia Pacific. So that's the global distribution of attacks. But what does it mean actually? That means, first of all, Europe and North America might be a good target. On the other side, we see also, especially North Korea and all of these emerged countries with high technology, perfect victims for cyber attacks. When we look into the cost of breaches, that's different. And as I said in my presentation, there's always a correlation between the time an attacker lingers in your network, the so-called dwell time, and then the cost that is associated with this attack. And when we look back to the global distribution, we see, on average, the cost of breach is today about 5 million euro. North America, 9 million. South Korea, 3.6 million euro. So we see South Korea is definitely on top. It's an emerged market, and finally, it's something I couldn't agree more that phishing attacks are definitely the tactic number one. Compromised user credentials for insiders, or insiders using bring your own device. This is definitely making the headline. And as I said also in my previous presentation, DDoS attacks. These are something, it's maybe not that much on the telecommunication, it's more even also for the enterprises dealing with mission critical infrastructure, utilities, and healthcare. And these are perfect victims for such kind of attacks.
Digging a bit deeper into some of those stats you've mentioned, is it all related to sort of maybe legacy equipment and things like that, or is it more to the technology, or more the just targeting different regions? Are you seeing any sort of correlation? Because in some ways, some of APAC is a little bit, their stacks are a bit simpler and newer operators, newer, technology, but I just wasn't sure.
So what we have seen in 2023/2024 was, especially in the US, we have seen a lot of attacks came with ransomware, ransomware as a service.
Right.
So we have seen Lockbit, for example, was one of the attacker group actually made the headlines. But finally, or fortunately, actually, in the collaboration, here again also Yolanda actually underpinned, we have to collaborate, and the collaboration between the FBI and the Europol actually took the Lockbit down. That was another good example why we should collaborate, because the bad side collaborates. Look into the black market, we see in collaboration, and we see actually a huge learning also from different attacker groups, how they can start a more sophisticated attack, how they can utilize maybe different tools, and even also they combine tools from different kind of groups to start their kind of collaborated attack against groups. So that's something what I see in North America. Maybe the last word is, especially to Asia and Europe, pretty the same, is we see this social engineering attacks. That's something that is in Europe quite popular, in Asia Pacific the same. We see also the attack against this mission-critical network in Europe, probably also driven because of we have seen a lot of the Ukraine right now, and driven due to the war between Russia and Ukraine right now. But these kind of mission-critical attacks is something we see, especially then also for utilities, and these are also perfect victims for ransomware attacks.
I do like that train of thought you were getting at, Sam, where, look, the numbers that Gerald shared is like, oh, you know what, 45% North America, 15% APAC. I don't think that's any indication that, oh, you know what, Asia Pacific is less attacked. I do think it's a combination of several things. Number one, I do think it's also regulation. For example, I do think there's stricter regulation, whether that's in the US or Europe, to report. I know, for example, for a fact, let's say in the Philippines, it's like, look, although we do have the National Privacy Commission, there is a requirement for reporting. Don't quote me on it, but I do feel that there's actually less forward reporting sometimes. It's like, you know, we do try to, you know, I don't think it's as much. But like, you know, when I talk, for example, with my counterparts in the US or in Europe, I mean, we all suffer the same degree of, like, it's not any different, right? I mean, it's like, look, what, I mean, and I think that was part of what was shown earlier by GSMI is like, look, I mean, the concerns and threats are actually the same. So I just don't think that we should be like, oh, you know what, APAC is 15%, we can sleep better at night. No way, right? I mean, I do think we need to be as vigilant as the rest.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful and insightful. Can you give us some maybe examples of some incidents you've had to deal with? And I think we've spoken before about sort of endpoint response and the challenges there.
So for us, that's where we're starting to still drive into. Like I said, I mean, you know, we're lucky to have the unique perspective of being able to see both the IT and the network side together. You know, I think gone are the days, if ever the common conversation, and I think it's a great thing, you know, as I talk to more CISOs from all other operators, whether that's in Europe or the US, the drive now to look at common tooling across both infrastructures, I think is becoming, you know, a more important conversation. I think, you know, gone are the days that I think security leaders, even at the network side, are comfortable with just network-based monitoring. I think there is more and more now that, hey, you know what, we have to look at the actual OS. We now have to look at the workload. So for example, for us in Globe, we've actually rolled out EDRs in a lot of our network environments. You know, whether that's Huawei, whether that's Nokia, whether that's, you know, some of our Mavenir, you know, like SMSCs and whatever, we've actually put in IT-based EDRs in there. If it's okay to mention a product name, like, you know, CrowdStrike, for example, we've actually put in there. So traditionally, what would be only in IT, we've actually started to roll it out on the network side. It's not 100% yet. We are still working on both sides of the fence, trying to convince Huawei to upgrade their Linux kernel so it's going to be compatible. We're trying to convince some of the IT vendors, security vendors, to be able to support some of the non-traditional operating systems. But either way, the message is, like I said, you know, you can't look at them differently anymore. And the observability that is necessary, most especially now on the network side of the fence, I think is important. I think the realization that needs to happen is, for example, a lot of these systems run on the same operating system. They're all Linux. A threat actor, for example, is not going to say, oh, you know what, it's Linux, but it's on the telco side. You know what, I'm not going to try to SSH into that. Like, they're not going to distinguish, right? So I think the sooner that we also look at it the same and not treat security differently because of the different departmental functions that we have within our companies, the better it's going to be.
Yeah, that's helpful. Maybe back to AI. What benefits, I mean, you've discussed some of the benefits already. I mean, are you maybe seeing, sorry, back to Anton on this, are you seeing that in your SOC? Are you seeing, you know, these sorts of technologies implemented? How has it helped? Are there still any challenges?
So my CAIO hat, so I do wear two hats now, so both CISO and both Chief AI Officer. So my Chief AI Officer hat is more focused on looking at business use cases. So it's like a mini CIO hat, but focused on Gen AI. However, though, yes, Sam, right? I think for us, though, it's less about, I mean, so a lot of what Gerald showed, actually, is where we're doing a lot of experimentation. I mean, I think the good thing is that within the security industry, we are seeing that across, I guess, the tech segment, there's actually a lot of initial adoption of AI, Gen AI very specifically, in the security industry more than anywhere else, right? You know, whether that's going to be now, you know, like a lot of it is co-pilots. A lot of it's ease of use for the analysts, like what Nokia showed. I think the great advantage is it doesn't seem like we have to do that ourselves. It's like as long as you participate heavily in a lot of betas or alphas of some of your partners, they're actually rolling out features fairly fast, right? So I think it's now just going to be the appetite for adoption for a lot of us as to whether we want to be able to start using some of these tools. But there's certainly a lot, and I think it helps, right? Maybe just the last point to relate. Like, look, Gerald clearly well said that what we want to be able to do is to reduce dwell time. So for us, for example, in Globe, we're currently at 3.8 hours time to mitigate. But really, because at the end of the day, there's a billion alerts that an analyst is going to be trying to treat, and you can't do that, right? Like, really, the best practice is to do a funnel method so that you actually want your analysts to probably only respond to 2 to 3 incidents a day. Everything else, the next 999 whatever million, you probably want to either automate or through a lot of these AI solutions, really just orchestrate or ignore based on some of your filters. So I think a lot of these Gen AI technologies is helping that, and we hope that it should reduce a lot of the dwell times globally even further.
Yeah. And from your side, Gerald, has the industry been keen to adopt these new technologies?
Yeah, it's definitely a new technology, and all of us, we actually have to experiment with these kind of use cases. The journey starts right now with Gen AI, but you have to define actually what is a particular use case for an Gen AI assistant that really helps a security analyst. And you cannot implement all of them. And the second thing I would have to say is also that whenever you think about to integrate a kind of ChatGPT or an LLM or whatever it is in your security operations center, it has to give you an appropriate answer, whatever you ask them for. So if you ask them for a particular question of what is the remediation process, it might be in a position also to answer. That means you have to train constantly the Gen AI, and you have to train them for a telco environment. You have to train them about 5G practices, best examples, 5G security threats, all of these regulatory things that we have heard about from TSA to NIS2 and so on. So all of this defines also the parameter for the co-pilot so that it starts to answer in an appropriate way and not start a kind of hallucination or something like this.
But that iteration process, that's been around within SOCs for a while, hasn't it? It's not new, it's something part of their daily sort of practices. So it's something that could be, used quite readily and quite easily into a SOC currently. Is that what you're seeing?
I mean, first I would say so, right?
To me, it's like, well, surely they go through this process anyway, so
it's a
it
natural
should be
step,
quite
right?
easy. Yeah, it does seem like a natural step. And I think when you were saying that the reports should be, automatically generated, and I mean, yeah, I think, like you said, there's always this iteration process. But the trustworthiness of the
maybe
report.
just quick answer to that
Yeah.
before you can step in. As I said, the first thing what I presented was the threat hunting part is something where definitely and Gen AI helps a security analyst.
Yeah.
The second one is then also a guided response plan.
Yes.
And maybe here again, it's the start of a longer journey. Start with a guided response plan where I have the supervisor position as a security analyst to checkmark, yes, go with this security mitigation plan, and not doing something behind the scenes without my knowledge. And the third one is the creation of the report. But the next step is then also looking into what else can Gen AI can do. For example, a threat simulation, like in digital twin. Before I receive some threats, actually, but I receive some threat intelligence information, wouldn't it be great, actually, that the Gen AI could start a simulation based on all of the signature information that I receive from external sources, start a simulation and give me an information about the potential impact of a threat, which is maybe around the globe right now.
I mean, I get that sounds quite exciting. And in terms of what an analyst was traditionally doing versus what it can do with Gen AI now, it seems to be a lot more engaging. As an observation.
It's like ease of work, right? I mean, at the end of the day, like anything that will reduce the amount of menial tasks that people currently do, and again, it's not specific to just security. Like we're seeing that with just general Gen AI adoption, even on the business side of the fence. Is like, look, a lot of the power users, like an example I gave yesterday is like, look, our legal team is actually the heaviest users of ChatGPT Enterprise, and they're creating their own chatbots just because it's making their work easier, right? Whatever it is that can allow employees to go home earlier and probably have dinner with their families early on, I think it's something that they're going to do. So analysts included.
Good. Gerald, we also spoke about IT versus OT. Do you want to share your thoughts on that?
So yeah, as Anton said, it's not necessarily necessary that we have an OT security team or network security team versus an IT security team. On the other hand, we see actually the tools are different. The tools actually in an IT security, they are dealing with TCP/IP protocols, for example, versus in an OT world or telecommunication, they are dealing with SS7, diameter, GTP, different complex infrastructure. So coming then from an homogeneous IT security tool landscape to a very specialized EDR or a privileged access or whatever, that makes a difference even also to investigate some anomalies, but also then to have an appropriate response to cut the lines between the command and control or whatever maybe then the next steps are to update firewalls or access control lists or whatever.
I would just add though, like I think we just have to be careful, and of course not debating with Gerald. I mean, we're friends, but it's not either or, right? Like for example, yes, IT is TCP/IP, but there is TCP/IP in network, right? I mean, that's what the whole 5G thing is too. So I don't think it's either or. I do agree that there are specialized stuff within the telco segment. Again, our SOC, we're converged. We also handle SS7. We also handle diameter. And in fact, there are great converged use cases. I would say is that, look, you can look at common tooling, but you definitely need specialized tooling on the network side. Just how, for example, like, look, we're a Palo Alto shop. And I don't mean this as a pitch. I mean it as an example. All of our firewalls, whether on the IT side and even on the RAN side, are Palo Alto. However, we do have specialized signaling, SS7 and diameter firewalls, because some of the traditional IT vendors is not going to be able to support those protocols, right? So I don't think we need to necessarily split it in between. You can have a common tooling, common framework, but most definitely, I do agree with Gerald. It's like, look, you need some specialized additions on top of that. And it can be approached in multiple ways.
And that's what I meant also with my presentation, to have, when you think about the integration, it's the integration of the tools. And you have the different intelligence sources, like the Palo Alto firewalls or the Fortinets, to name another vendor just. And then also all of the others that are maybe more specialized for an OT network. But finally, all of them are feeding constantly the unified security orchestration platform. And that's finally the ultimate goal for a security operations center team, to make this combined, to contextualize these kind of attacks. And it doesn't matter, because if the attacker comes over the IT or over the GTPC, it doesn't matter. So it will keep you busy. An attacker normally comes not only with one attack, it comes with multiple attacks to keep you busy as a security analyst, and it finds a way. And all of these alarms have to be contextualized to finally give you an information. This is a multi-stage attack, and this multi-stage attack has then a higher severity code as any other.
And we are POVing the Nokia solutions, by the way, which is very good. The cybersecurity dome and their EDRs are worth a look.
No comment for me on any of them. What was I going to say? I think I just hear a lot of complexity, and I think also what we're trying to bring is a reduction in complexity by using, I guess, a lot of these emerging technologies, which is really good to see in here. I think as we get close to the end, sort of what it will be your focus in the next 6 to 12 months, and maybe some advice for the telco industry?
For us, to be honest, a lot of it is still getting the basics right. When you think about it, like a lot of the best practices, and David and I were talking about this, like, look, it hasn't necessarily changed. I think it's just a matter of like, look, we just got to get it right and keep on pounding at it, because I don't think we have really even gotten to 100% of some of the common best practices that need to be done. And then we keep on getting fed with, oh, there's a new next best thing that we have to do. And next thing you know, we're not even done with some of the old stuff that we, like patching, for example. Like, who has actually gotten patching perfected? I don't think anybody's going to raise their hands, right? Like, it's just such a difficult thing to do. But like, look, that is still critical. And we're trying to talk about AI or whatever, some other new threats, but like, patching is such a basic thing. So for us, that's still what we're trying to get nailed down, is like, look, like, we do have a set of core principles that we want to be able to do. Like, for example, for Globe, one of the things, like, look, MFA everywhere. And that is already so difficult to do, right? And we just don't want to move on to the next best thing up until we can actually get that nailed down. So we're trying to reduce it, basically, to answer the question, we're trying to reduce it to basically what would be 4 key principles that we have to do and get perfect across our infrastructure, both IT and network. And if we can get those basic principles done, I think at least we can probably check off 90% of the threats, and then whatever is remaining is probably what we'll try to hack in after.
Yeah. When you make a good statement, especially also about the vulnerability management and the patches and these kind of things. I mean, as you said, these are actually the basics, but still, when I look into the threat intelligence report, I saw actually a pie chart saying that 95% from the vulnerability structure is based on unpatched security. And I mean, if that is the basic situation, we talk about the next thing, Gen AI and PQC, all of the next things, but the, let's say, cybersecurity hygiene is actually really to make sure that we have a patch management that allows us actually to have always an appropriate security in the network. And the second thing I always underpin is the situation that when we collaborate and collaborate in working groups from 3GPP for security, or in these kind of threat intelligence teams like this Motive from Mobile Threat Intelligence Framework, or the 5G security framework, the FIGHT, these kind of working groups with all of these specialists, and not me, for example, being here, but these specialists, those that understand all of these bits and bytes and collaborate, then these are probably the next steps really to make a big movement into the right direction to make our digital life actually more secure.
Great, that's helpful. All right, I think we might wrap it up there. Thank you both for joining. It was great to have this conversation, and I always like a little bit of debate, so I'm glad we got that in there. Just to mention to everyone, there is lunch afterwards in, where are we? In the main area on level 2. So yeah, after this wraps up.
Orchid.
Sorry?
It's the Orchid room.
There we go, Orchid room. Our panelists are more well versed than I am. But yeah, thank you for joining, and we'll see you for the next session in about an hour, I think.
Thank you.
An hour, thank you.
An hour. Thank you.